Hello, everyone. Darkgeyser here, welcoming you back to episode 12 in my Space Engineers Survival series. Some pretty exciting things have taken place while I was working. We've managed to get our base fairly thoroughly fortified, and I have begun work on a small fighter craft since I'm going to be taking a little bit of offense in the relatively near future, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and take the tour. Out here we have my building deck. This is where I take care of most of my building and my construction. I have placed a build and repair system, which I think is furiously attempting to weld my floor, although I don't think I have any more steel plate. We shall see. I have my blast door closed, and for those of you who will remember from a previous episode, I was concerned about the fact that my connector for my mining ship, which was mounted outside, was quite exposed, and I could not come up with a reasonable way to protect it. I was being an idiot at the time. It did not occur to me until last evening that I have a large set of blast doors here. Why don't I put everything behind the blast doors? That's what they're for. I did manage to get the Blue Scarab, which is my mining vehicle. I did manage to get it through the door and around everything without wrecking any of the equipment. And I managed to make some pretty dramatic expansion to the base. I do not currently have a connection for my roving vehicle, but then again, the rover uses so little power that the battery that I have on it I think is going to last a while. It's certainly going to last long enough for me to figure out a docking system, and I may just go ahead and try to put something directly underneath where the Scarab is just to save space. You can see over here I have my build and repair system, which is fastened to my cargo container. My cargo container is coming off of my refinery, my full-size assembler. I was very excited about that. I found that it became tedious looking inside the cargo container for material that was coming out of the assembler. I had to keep scrolling down to where the assembler was located, and as the parts were rolling off, I had to keep going and searching for them. So I went ahead and I put in a sorting block, which I set to pull components and set to drain all. So as things are built in the assembler, they automatically get sucked out and thrown in the cargo container, so now I have one-stop shopping. Because of the fact that I don't really have a lot of opportunity for solar power, and I am concerned about my wind turbines being so vulnerable because I still don't really have a way to fix those. Let me come over here and turn down the sound volume on the build and repair. There we go. I should probably post an epilepsy warning because I've got so many flashing lights around, but hopefully we won't have an issue. So as I was saying, my wind turbines are still vulnerable and I am still somewhat concerned about them, so I went ahead and I put in 2 hydrogen-oxygen generators and I promptly piped them into my hydrogen engine. The hydrogen engine is currently full of hydrogen. However, the current output is 0, and that's primarily because all of the power that I need right now is coming from the wind turbines outside. If I get to the point where I start drawing more power than I am producing, then the hydrogen engine will kick in and begin producing up to 5 megawatts of power. Unfortunately, it pretty much drained all of the ice that I had. I am piped into the refinery system. I do have 2 energy reduction modules on the refinery. I'm not that worried about how fast things get refined, and I'm not eager to put on one of the yield modules because those tend to take a lot of power. And right now, power is my biggest problem. So I put on a couple of energy saving modules, and now we've got things getting piped in here so that the material that I just brought back on the Scarab will go ahead and find its way into the refinery. I've also placed a couple of programming blocks, and I have a couple of LCD panels set up. I do not currently have those programmed. The idea is for one of the panels to show the materials that I currently have, all of the ore and all of the ingots and so on and so forth. I may have to show all of the ore on one panel and all of the ingots on another one. I don't know how good the resolution is once you start showing past a certain amount of data. I may go ahead and put in a third panel. That one is going to show battery power, how much power I'm producing, and so on and so forth. I'm very happy with the way I have the blast doors set up. I currently have them designed in such a way with the sensor outside that I can, assuming that I don't crash into anything, if I pull a small vehicle within range of the blast doors, either inside or outside, and in here it's set fairly close, outside I have a little bit more range, then the blast doors open automatically. And then of course once I leave the range of the sensor, then the blast doors close. That way I can come and go with either the rover or the flyer and not have to worry about punching a bunch of buttons and having to worry about opening and closing the garage door. However, I do have this one door set up on the sensor that you can see out there, and I have a button on the button panel. Under normal circumstances, the sensor will control this one blast door panel so that I can come and go without exposing everything in my base to enemy attack. You can see that the lights are green so that the thing is working, and once I leave the sensor range, then it's just like what I have set up with the big door with all of the vehicles. Then when I come back into range, and I have that set at a few meters, I don't have to worry about having a long range on that. However, if I'm coming and going, it takes a while for the door to open and close, and if I'm building something out here or doing some other project, then I simply push the button on the button panel and it turns off this blast door block so that it doesn't keep opening and closing. One of the things I like about this is the fact that even with the button panel here in front of this block, I can still reach my other O2H2 generator, in which I put a small amount of ice. This is just for refilling my hydrogen and oxygen bottles as I'm coming and going from the base. So if I do start to run out of hydrogen, I can just run in the base real quick. I can stop by here, and then as I mine ice, I can go ahead, I can stop on the way in, I can take a few hundred or 1,000 kilos, I can go ahead and throw it in here, and then the rest of it will go, when I dock, will go into the rest of the system and will generate hydrogen for the hydrogen engine. I gave myself a command deck. Ooh, it looks like I've lost a couple of cameras. I had begun installing cameras, and I do have a camera mod that allows me to rotate cameras so that I can see. This is on the top of the hill on one side, and this is on the top of the hill on the other side, and I also have guns mounted here, but I don't know what's happened to my other two cameras, so obviously I need to go see what's going on. So now we take the outside tour, and I'm not too worried about the Terminators. They don't normally get into the base. So I have my 4 wind turbines. I have moved those up higher, so I'm less concerned about them being attacked. The only problem is the fact that I also have a row of guns mounted in front of them, and on more than one occasion the guns have shot away at some of the grid that has holding up the wind turbines, so I'm a little bit concerned at that. I have a continuous grid going up to here, and this is where I believe 2 of my cameras are located. The lights are green, so uh-oh, this one's been damaged. No, it appears to be functioning. How odd. Well, let's go see what's going on over here. This is the other hilltop gun that I have mounted, and I have these set at a slightly longer range to try to keep the Terminators at bay. And again, oh, I think I know what the problem is. I think that my grid has been cut somewhere. because my guns are set to auto. My guns are set to rotate randomly. So I think, oh, wait a minute. We have a Terminator. Oh, that's alive. That's a live one. There we go. You bastard. I'd be willing to bet that that gun severed something somewhere along my path here, attempting to shoot at that particular Terminator, and that's one of the problems that I've been having, and one of the reasons why I set some of the guns to fire at a longer range, because I've been having that problem with the Terminators getting close enough. I bet here's my problem. And I don't have any steel plates. Doggone it. Gotten used to the idea of flying things upside down. Oh, I'd be willing to bet that all of my plates are gone. Yep, all of my plates are gone. They've been sucked up by my building repair. Now the question is, am I actually going to be able to get to any plates? Oh, there we go. Okay. Phew. Alright. Yep, I'd be willing to bet that this is how this got cut. Because I don't see any blocks underneath here. Oh, and there it goes. Yep. Okay. As I said, the Terminators will fall a long way. And apparently, so will the goodie bags they carry. Apparently today is display day. 2 out of 2 for those. So that's why 2 of my cameras were down, is they had no power. So that explains a lot. So as I was saying, I'm hoping to go on the offensive a little bit. I've noticed that there are more... Oh, we got a metal grid. Okay. I've noticed that there are more ships in the sky lately, and I'm thinking that some of them might be something that I might be able to capture or shoot down and then subsequently loot. The fighter itself is not designed for a tremendous amount of survivability. It's basically 5 Gatling cannons mounted in a tight pattern directly ahead. It's more or less a jousting vehicle. You go ahead and you fly straight at the enemy and you try desperately to cut him apart before he gets a chance to return too much fire. I have put some heavy armor blocks over in front of some of the engines and so on and so forth, and since I have a nasty habit of having a central gun here and the gun gets hit and then immediately behind that is my cockpit, so I put a heavy armor block in between the gun and the cockpit. None of these guns are plumbed up at all, and all of them have to be loaded by hand, and I'm going to be making ammunition soon. I fortunately managed to stumble upon a magnesium deposit, so I'm currently working on that. The build and repair system, I've decided to break down and use it. I resisted it for a while because I'm an old school Space Engineers player. However, I had decided after looking at some of my video and some of the video of other YouTube creators, watching me run back and forth and weld things is simply not that exciting for me, and I'm sure it's even less exciting for my viewers. So let's see what's going on here. Let's see what this thing is attempting to do. Interior plates, steel plates, and metal grids. Okay. Well, let's go into the production, and we're going to go with a couple of hundred interior plates. We're going to run 100 metal grids, and we're going to go from there. So this is where I'm at. I've also decided my next vehicle, after I get a chance to test the fighter, and I'm not entirely sure. I think it doesn't have a lot of forward thrust for braking. It doesn't have a lot of side-to-side thrust. It has a fair amount of upward thrust, and I think my upward thrusters are going to cut off my forward thrusters. Okay, well, I made a boo-boo there. See, this is what happens when you design things tired. You do stupid stuff like this. I'm very fortunate that I managed to figure this out, and I think my build-in repair... Oh, there it is. Okay. This is one part of the build-in repair system that I love, is the fact that you can go ahead and paint something and then it will take it apart for you. And I'm going to have it, I have it set to well before grinding, so it's probably going to take a while to get to those blocks. But it's a fairly definitive color. I don't think I've ever made anything that color on purpose, and so anything that I painted that color, yeah, it deserves to be ground down and removed. So we'll go from there. My next vehicle is probably going to be some sort of recovery vehicle. If I'm going to be attempting to take enemy ships in atmosphere, for those of you that have only played in space, like I had before we started to get planets, taking an enemy ship in space is infinitely easier than taking it on a planet. You approach the ship, you disable whatever weapons, or you come in from a blind spot or some combination of the two, and then you grind down a cockpit, or you build a cockpit of your own, and you start to take control of the ship slowly but surely, starting mostly with the dampeners so that the ship will actually stop before flying out of the range of your base or your ship or your allies or what have you. The problem is that in space, if you happen to shoot off a fair amount of the ship, you can probably still rotate it around to the point where there are still thrusters for the dampers to work. If you're trying to take a ship in atmosphere and you shoot off more than a few of the thrusters, it's highly likely that what's going to be happening is that the ship is going to crash before you have an opportunity to land on it, take it over, or even land on it and try to salvage anything. So fighting enemy ships, particularly flying vehicles, on the ground it may not be so bad, but fighting enemy flying vehicles in atmosphere tends to make more of a mess, and you tend to have less left over. So I'm thinking that I'm going to have a recovery vehicle, some sort of a flyer that is not designed for combat, something with a lot of heavy lifting capability and a couple of landing gear to clamp onto whatever wreckage I happen to have left over after I shoot down the enemy. And then I'll bring it back here. I did not turn on the area for the build and repair system, but it will reach just to the edge of the grid here. So anything that I bring and I drop off on my own doorstep will eventually be ground down. What do we have floating around up here? Armed transport victory, cargo explosives. No, I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be anything left of that if I shot it down. So we're going to leave that one alone. And an unknown signal. It's only 4 minutes. Okay. So there we are. As I said, my defenses are becoming much more impressive. Once I get a few more heavy armor blocks welded in, then everything will be fine. This was originally going to be my solution for my connector. I was going to run things out here and then put an armored shroud around it to try to protect it. Maybe put a piston on it that would extend when I wasn't under attack so that I could connect with that. And then again, I realized that I was being an idiot and I had an entire garage that I could use, once I widened it out a little bit, that I could use for docking safely and unloading safely in there. So we have to patch this up a little bit so the neighbors don't get in. But other than that, I think that things are moving along very well. As I said, I need to build a recovery vehicle. I need to take my fighter out once I figure out where to properly place the thrusters. I may go for a small solar array up top, simply because it is an alternate source of power, and unlike the wind turbines, the only advantage that solar power currently has over wind turbines, because the wind turbines generate a lot more power for the amount of material that you have to spend, that you have to invest in order to build them. Solar panels can be more tightly clustered. As long as you don't have a solar panel sitting in the shadow of another solar panel, you can put them very, very tightly together, and they will not interfere with each other like the wind turbines do. So what I might do is I might put a small solar array on one of the corners or one of the hilltops or what have you, and then we'll see if the defense guns just keep shooting everything down or if it's actually worth the effort. After that, we're going to take stock of where we're at. We're going to see how easy the enemy ships are to capture. Oh, there's another Terminator. We're going to see how easy the enemy ships are to capture, and we're going to see what sort of results we get from capturing them. And if it turns out that the yield is good for the risk, then I may go ahead... Oh, some reactor components. I may go ahead and become a pirate full-time and start moving in and capturing enemy ships and enemy bases and so on and so forth, and attempt to supplement my income that way. But as I said, we shall see. I want to thank you all for following along. I try to read and respond to all of the comments. I do appreciate comments and constructive criticism. As always, likes are appreciated and subscriptions doubly so. This is Darkhizer signing off. Thank you for watching.